All right, so in this lecture, we are going to examine a sample piece of code and take a look at how to use for loops to manipulate strings and some of the things that we need to watch out for when we're dealing with more complex pieces of data and using for loops. And this is a bit of a preview of some of the things that we need to watch out for when we are working with arrays. So let's take a look at this code example. So we're working with for loops and strings here. Let's say we have a string str and we set that, we give it the value of hey. We set up a for loop where we have an index, we set it equal to 0. We're checking if index is less than 3, and we're going to increment index, make sure that's a clear x, by 1. So we're going to increment plus plus of index. Inside of our for loop, whenever our index is less than 3, we're going to print to the console string str.substring, and we're going to find the index, so our current value of index, to index plus 1. So we're going to be printing out a single character. Remember that substring of index of a number, and a number with a value 1 greater than that is always just going to print 1 character. So let's use our friend the code trace. We'll squeeze it in over here. And we're going to need 3 columns here. And we're going to go ahead and trace this. So let's use, we're going to go ahead, I know I'm going to have 3 lines here, so we'll say out here. We'll squeeze that in. And we need to track index. And we're going to track str, just so that we know where things are. Okay, so our index, we're going to give an initial value of 0 here, and str has the value of hey. And if we think of hey as our 3 characters, h, e, and y, we start at our index of 0, and we go up to an index of 2. So each one of those characters has its index placement. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through this. Okay, let's get into what it is actually going to output. So our index initial value is 0. Is 0 less than 3? Yes, true, good. So we're going to step inside of our for loop, and we are going to print out what it asks for. We're taking str, our value of hey, and we're looking for the substring at index 0. Well, let's look at index. Index is currently at a value of 0, and 0 plus 1 is 1. So we're going to take the 0th index, we're going to find the next value, and then subtract 1, right? So because of the way that substring works, it's always 1 less than that value, and we print the character. So our output is an h. Good. So our output is an h. We're done with this statement. We go to our last curly brace. That means we're going to increment index by 1. And we're now going to go through and do our check again. This statement only runs once. This is important to remember. This only runs once at the beginning of the for loop. Then we check the middle statement each time. This is only once. Okay, so now is 1 less than 3? Yes, 1 is less than 3. Great, we get to step inside of our for loop and run the code. We're going to go in here and we're going to check our substring of str again. Our current value of index is 1, so we're going to look down here and see that the value at 1 is e, okay, and then we go to index plus 1, which is 2, and we're going to backtrack from that because of the way that substring works. And we're going to grab what is ever in between there. It's still just an e. We're on a println, so a new line. We're going to go ahead and print e. Great, we're done with that statement. We go down to the curly brace, which means we increment index by 1. Now it becomes 2. Is index less than 3? Yes, 2 is less than 3. Good, we're going to step inside of our for loop, taking the substring of hey, index at currently value 2 and plus 1. Since it goes past the end, substring doesn't really matter. On the second value, it doesn't matter about going past the end, so it still is able to grab that, and we see that that is a y. So we print that value. Awesome. We go down to the end of our curly brace. We increment index to 3. Is 3 less than 3? No, 3 is not less than 3. And so our for loop ends, and we move on in our code having printed out hey vertically instead of horizontally. So this is a really simple way to change the orientation in which you print a word. Kind of cool. But we need to watch out for something. So note, okay, so our first index here needs to be less than the end of our so first index in substring can't go beyond the end of our string. The second integer here can go beyond it, but not the first one. First index in substring can't go beyond end of string. And you will get an out of bounds error. Think of out of bounds error, right, as a sports analogy, right? If you go out of bounds in a game, the game stops, right? We got to reset. Same thing here. If we go out of bounds, if we try to go past here, this is out of bounds. Out of bounds, OOB. If we go out of bounds at our first index, if this tries to go here, we're going to have a problem. So we cannot go out of bounds there. Now, this seems like a simple thing to fix, or a simple problem to avoid. But what happens if I do this one switch? If I say index is less than or equals to 3, all of a sudden, index can now equal 3. 3 is now beyond the ending index of hey. And now we have an out of bounds exception error, and we have broken our program by simply writing a single equal sign right there. So be very careful about whether or not you're using less than or equals to, or sometimes greater than or equals to, because we also don't want to go negative. So we need to be very careful about what we are using right here. This is super important for checking that we are within the proper index values of a string, or when we get to them when we are inside of arrays. So very important. Seems like a small detail. It is, but this is all about paying attention to the details. Computer science is all about checking the details, and this is a really, really important one to pay attention to. All right, everyone, I will see you in the next one.